Okay, hey everybody, welcome to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. A really cool review for you guys from the brand Venezianico. And they're an Italian brand founded in 2017, which actually is an evolution and a bit of a rebrand of a 2015 brand known as, I probably can't pronounce this well, this is one of the reasons also for the name change originally, for Meccani Venezian. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. Venetian probably is how it was pronounced correctly, but I messed that all up. Anyways, they did want to switch to an easier name to pronounce, and they did go through some growing pains originally, as many brands often do, and I think that they've really made an effort to kind of earn their way back into the enthusiast market conversation. So when the brand reached out, of course I did kind of recall their previous offerings, and I actually thought that this one looked pretty interesting in terms of being a really cool dive watch. Now, in terms of divers, some key characteristics in design when you're looking for a dive watch, of course, you're going to want to find water resistance, typically some type of screw down crown. You want something that's tough, legible, with a dive time bezel, and a diver's extension is always nice if on bracelet. This is their Nereide or Nereide. I'm butchering this fancy name, but Tungsteno. I got that right. 39 millimeter, and it's a smaller, more refined take on their classic 42 millimeter diver, named after the iconic Venetian submarine of the same name. These go for 765 direct, and this was sent in kindly by the brand for me to check out. They didn't give me any input or any notes or anything like that. They're seeing this video just like all of you. And yeah, I think that's pretty bold and brave of them. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. All right, now while I can't pronounce these Italian naming conventions very well, one thing I can absolutely appreciate is going to be that dial. Look at this beautiful mother of pearl dial, and it plays really nicely off of this high polished tungsten bezel insert, which is actually pretty rare and uncommon. And I think tungsten is a great material. It's obviously very strong and scratch resistant, and you can see it takes on a beautiful polish. Now, on the other side, you could have done this with a steel insert, but then you're going to have to worry about those micro scratches and everything a little bit more. So I think this looks really great. I think it would have been nice also if they would have tried maybe a circular brushing pattern, just to be able to get a little bit more legibility in terms of, depending on the reflecting. Now, of course, here it's going to, appear to be more black, and that's just because it's reflecting off of a dark camera lens as well as a dark room. I mean, the only lights on in the room right now are going to be the two lights that are off to either side of my little setup here. So, of course, in practice, this is going to be reflecting off of your surroundings, and that is all going to play off of course, these other reflective surfaces that are on this beautiful H-Link bracelet. But with that said, let's actually dive into some of the specs here, because I think this is where it really does well. So 39 millimeters in diameter, which is just about perfect, right? 10.3 millimeters thin, which is very, very nice. And you can see it does have some nice finishing here. Of course, a couple of fingerprints here and there, when that's just kind of what happens when you have something that is really nicely polished, but you can see nice sharp transitions. I will say that the tactile engagement is very good, maybe even on the slightly sharp side. So if that is one of your pet peeves, it's something to be aware of here in terms of that bezel grip as well as the crown grip. If that's one of the things that you look for, you want something that feels definitely very, an extra level of sharp, just to make sure that you can get a good grip on it, then you're going to really love that. If you're somebody that wants something to feel a little bit more finished and have those edges feel a little bit more broken in, then, it's something that you might, be concerned with. Now, the lug to lug on here is nice and short at just 45.3 millimeters. And then, of course, it's all stainless steel here, nicely brushed and polished. That high polished tungsten insert looks fantastic. You're getting 120 clicks on this bezel. Ooh, yes. And one of the byproducts, of course, of that high polished bezel insert is going to be the fingerprints. But The clickiness is very, very nice, very precise. Again, the grip itself might be slightly on the sharper side. Doesn't feel unfinished, it just doesn't feel finished to the higher levels. Then in terms of alignment, it looks like it rests on this click here. Then if we were to go, ooh, then yeah, it looks like it's maybe slightly like half a click forward. But if I go back around and maybe get it to rest on the half click before it clicks, okay, it's a little harder than it looks. So yeah, I would say this particular unit, I can't speak for all of them. In this case, I don't think it's very noticeable, not super noticeable. Now that you know it's there, of course you're going to see it. But again, when you look at this watch and then you just slightly tilt it at any other angle, there's going to be the parallax effect that is going to make everything disalign anyway. So as long as it's close enough, which in this case, I will say it is close enough. But let's give it a quick wipe because of that high polish there. I don't think you guys want to see my smudgy little fingerprints in particular anyway, but let's really dive in. Ooh, this dial, I mean, there's something to that mother of pearl that just gives that murky kind of water effect, and it just has a very nice kind of natural texture and ripple to it, which gives you a nice amount of movement and motion with that dial. Now the crown, as you guys saw, is really nicely done. It's also screwed down, nicely signed there. The case back, although you cannot see the movement, the case back itself is pretty nicely done. It's nicely etched, and to the touch, to your finger, it might be semi sharper, but on the back of your wrist, you're not going to notice it at all. But if you do run your fingernail across the back of it or your fingertip, you'll feel that it is, you know, quite sharp from that perspective. Not sharp again into terms of being irritating, but you're not probably going to want to rub your hand, you know, lovingly over the back of this dial. But it does have a really cool little tribute there, again, to that famous Venetian submarine. If I can get it to focus, there we go. Check that out. Maybe I can even get the light on it and focusing at the same time. Let's see. All right. There it is. Cool. So very, very nice from that perspective. And again, much better than something plain, even if it does add just, again, a little bit of sharpness to your fingertip, but not sharpness to the back of your wrist. Now, the movement inside behind the case back is going to be your automatic Miyota 9039. And yeah, 42-hour power reserve, 4 hertz sweep, or 28,800 vibration per hour in terms of the beat rate. Getting into the dial, hands, and loom details, you see, of course, that bright blue MoP dial with the nice applied indices, you know, very traditional kind of baton style there. Polished hands, nicely loomed. BGW9 Superluminova is going to be the particular compound that's used here. You do have 20 millimeter lug width there, so very nice, very versatile from that perspective. You do have a butterfly style deployant clasp, which I know isn't everybody's favorite, especially when it comes to divers. It's nice to have that buckle there, a more traditional, you know, diver's buckle. But I will say, with the overall nature of this particular watch and how dressy it appears, you know, I think it's completely fine with this type of setup, and I think it looks great, guys. So looks good. Nice shorter links here. These are actually going to be using a split pin construction, so you don't have to worry about losing collars or anything like that. So no pin and collar, just split pin, which I know in terms of a feeling expensive and finished, not the greatest choice, but the nice thing is they are pretty easy to adjust. It does taper down to 16 millimeters, which is actually a pretty nice aggressive taper here, especially considering they don't have a traditional diver's buckle there and clasp. But you do get, again, nice push button here, which does actually have a 2-piece to it. So this one goes down first because the shield emblem is going to be on that other piece. So you're going to want to do that in order, because if you were to do this, boom, you're going to be smashing that and potentially scuffing up your timepiece. So with that said, let's actually get this on the wrist and see how it wears. Ooh, okay, guys, check that out. That 39 millimeter size works really well, especially considering how much polish is actually on this watch, whether it's going to be from those center sections on the H-link or that beautifully high polished tungsten bezel insert. So there's going to be, you know, depending on the lighting situation, this can actually be quite loud, especially when you start getting into that dial and all of the visual interest you can get. Of course, if I keep my wrist, you know, too close to the lens here, you're going to get some perspective distortion, and it's going to make the watch seem a little bit bigger. And I think its smaller size is actually what helps it excel with being rather loud in terms of, I mean, you know, it's nice that it's not too shouty, but it's definitely a bit loud in terms of the, you know, polished portions. I'll keep my wrist nice and low and then just tighten up the frame here so that you guys can still get a detailed look, but just add a bit of a truer aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. Check that out. More centered, as you guys can see. You're also seeing more of the sides of that very nicely done bracelet, which does wrap around the wrist really well. Look at that silhouette. Very, very nice. Nice sharp transitions within there, that brushing and polishing. I also like that they went with brushed sides in terms of the links. I think it definitely ties in and just makes it feel a little bit more cohesive. And then, of course, yeah, you don't have a, you know, a nice traditional diver's buckle, but it does have a 20mm lug width, so you're going to have quite a few options from that perspective. You know, if you didn't want to throw this on a rubber two-piece strap, or of course a nylon pass-through, you're going to have a lot of different options at 20mm. Yeah, and it's a handsome piece, guys. Again, it's not for everybody. Blue dials aren't for everyone. And this particular blue dial, I mean, this thing is gorgeous. Look at that. It just, all the vibes. I mean, you could say that it just has, I mean, it looks like a cloudy sky captured on your wrist. And I think there's something really nice about that. And I like that, although there's a lot of texture within this mother of pearl dial, there's not too much color variation, so you're not going to have any crazy, you know, there's a little bit of rainbow pop that's happening from the reflector that's off camera there, that reflecting board, as you guys can see here. But let's actually just, for an example, you take that away and you can see really the dial itself is staying within those blue tones. So you don't have to worry about it getting too sassy or flamboyant or anything like that when it comes to mother of pearl, which sometimes that can be a bit of an issue with a MoP dial, you know, and it seeming maybe a bit feminine. So here I think this will totally work. And again, it's a fun kind of summertime piece, and I dig that. So with that said, let's actually get it off the wrist, set up for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. All right, check that out. Very nice little lume, and of course it goes with the blue dial with that BGW9 blue lume. This is dive watch, and you would expect it to glow well, but again, it is on the dressier side, so you know, I kind of take that as a victory that it didn't sacrifice its day look for you know, taxing out some of the evening time look, because I think in the dark this looks really, really great. But of course, one thing I like to work in is going to be a bit of a low light transition, because you're always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it's nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes run alike in less than optimal lighting. And of course, you're going to notice some smudges there on that, you know, on those polished accents, but hey, you know, it comes with the territory. But this is a pretty pristine watch otherwise, and you can see nicely brushed there with a nice uniform roll as the light glides over the contours of the case and bracelet. And then of course that dial is grabbing and reflecting the light in so many fun different ways. Look at that. I mean, there's something that you just can't really reproduce when you have something as natural as mother of pearl, and the way that it's going to just play with that light source. So really, really gorgeous, guys. But with that, let's actually get the lights back on here, get into some closing thoughts. All right, guys, so closing thoughts here. Where to start? this wears really thin and flat, and I think maybe it doesn't show up in pictures or in video as thin as it actually is because of the fact that it's 39 millimeters, so it's proportional. So if this was a larger watch and was this thin, you'd be like, wow, what a really thin watch. So that's one thing I do want to keep in mind. So if you are looking for a thinner dive watch, I mean, 20 atmospheres, 200 meters, at right about 10 millimeters, that's pretty outstanding. So this is a thin watch. It might not physically look super thin, but that is because it is actually very proportional. And remember, that has like a 45 millimeter lug to lug. So this is going to wear really, really well. And if you have a smaller wrist, this is going to really be a blessing for you in terms of the thinness, in terms of that short lug to lug, and just the overall proportions and balance. Now, in terms of model variants, check the site links for the current options and availability, as they're always releasing new models, and stuff sells out and then they have to replenish. So yeah, just check those links if you are interested in some other colors or other size options. Now, in terms of comparable models, guys, in the mid 700 price point, I think this, one thing that it's lacking, of course, is going to be that fancier and more desirable micro adjusting clasp. And I didn't even say quick adjust, but just a micro adjusting clasp, manual micro adjust would have worked really well. Also, and I think they actually did develop one for their slightly larger size for a newer release that if you dig around their site, you'll probably see a promotion for it. So that is an option there for some of the larger sizes. So if you thought the 39 was a bit small, hey, guess what? There's some other options there for you. But I will say that I think even without that clasp, that traditional diver's clasp, I think it makes up for kind of the differences with the beautifully thin profile, the exotic mother of pearl dial, and then that rare tungsten bezel insert, which you just don't very commonly see, especially in these type of watches. I think sometimes there are brands that are very niche and they get really crazy with all of the the different materials, and it's a little overboard. And then there's some higher end brands, of course, that will play around with things like that. Like Oris does a tungsten bezel. So it's one of those things. I think within the combination, the fit, the finish, everything kind of collectively, I think this one is pretty smart. So for me, guys, bottom line, this is just a nice balance of stylish and subtle. Yes, it's clearly a dressier diver, with all of the high polish points, and of course the choice to use such a dynamic mother of pearl dial. But I think it also has a lot of fine details that objectively support kind of that luxury-esque aesthetic. So it's not just about being shiny and expensive looking. They actually do have fine beveling, thin profiles, a lot of things that you would specifically search out objectively for some higher end timepieces. And yeah, this does have those qualities, and it doesn't charge too much, right? It's $765. So with that said, let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please do it like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.